right, welcome everybody to episode 60 of the Unchained Vodcast. Today, it's a big 6-0. We've been doing this for a long time.
A while.
We say that
It's been a while.
regularly because sometimes it's starting to feel like it's been ages. But anyway, it's officially
Technically, it has been, yes.
been 60 episodes. Technically, like 72 or something because we had the Veilcast before this that we were doing. But anyway, today we're going to talk about beta testing. We're not going to really talk about the beta testing experience because, of course, that's all under NDA. But instead, we're going to talk more about the testing administration, the provision of testing, how it's being administered for all the backers and everything, and just our general feedback on how we think it's going, things we would like to see, improvements we'd like to see made, so on and so forth, things we expected that haven't happened yet. So for this, I thought we would start with some of the positives. You know, don't want an entire cast of negativity. So we'll start with some of the positives, then just kind of list out some of the negatives that we see, and then actually get down and get into it. So as usual, chat, if you want to go ahead and you can go ahead and bring up some issues, things you think we should talk about, things that you think are positives that they've done really well with administering the test. Again, respecting NDA and not talking about the specific content in the test.
Yes.
There are a number of different positives. I think they have called out for player feedback in a useful way. Especially they had a topic for like a King of the Day topic where they're really asking people like what you want to see, what do you want us to put in game, things of that nature. There's also, the beta testing docs, class guides, things like that they've been putting out to kind of help people get familiar with it and know what, at least what the immediate test is doing, what bugs that they know about, what sort of things that they...
And every time they launch a test session, they send an email explaining what they want to test and what they need to be tested.
Yeah, the emails are super helpful for me. I mean, you don't have to be signed up to get the emails, but if you are, that's generally how I follow it, because I do check the forums, but we have our own guild forums, and I'm busy, so I don't really check the CU forums every day. So getting the testing emails is super helpful, and that's something that they do on the reg. I would say there's also been good substance of late with the weekly wrap-ups. Not everything, of course, and I would still like to see them be somewhat more meaningful, but I think they have been improved. Some of the things that they talk about, I think it mainly just helps that we have a test now, and so they can talk and say, this is what we're working on that's in the testing or that we're putting in testing and stuff, and so that's helpful for making them seem more substantial than just, we're continuing working on things. I mean, most of it still amounts to we're continuing working on things. But, and lastly, for me at least, on positive things, there is a game that we can test. And testing it, I will say, at least one thing I think I'm able to say, is testing it is reasonably fun. It is a game. It doesn't feel like just a pure tech test like Alpha does. So...
I think for me, communication has been the biggest positive that's come out of testing both alpha and beta, is especially now with Brian. There's a lot of during testing communication between developers, Brian, Tim, people looking at server metrics as the test is going on and player feedback in the moment. And I really like to see that.
And you can see it easily when you're in the Discord, because the playtest channel gets in real time bug reports, and sometimes in real time bug fixes that you need to test.
And you see, you just see all the developers in game and into the Discord just active.
So a lot of questions going through there.
Yeah.
It is a big positive that they interact with the testers in real time.
Which is also, I think Discord is kind of a positive on that. It's something I kind of want to get into later on. That I think it is potentially a problem as well, but I do think overall it's probably a positive during the main tests when they're all on and everything, because you can just post all your stuff in there while they're there watching it and stuff, and really get some it's very easy to post your bugs up there.
Yes.
Whereas sometimes it's a real pain to open up the forum. I usually keep the forum open while I'm doing the testing just so I can go over and be like, but
yeah,
it's
on that
Discord is much faster.
On that note, too, the community, other players, people like Strike JK, even Sacrix. There's a group of familiar players who are always doing beta testing, who are actually very helpful to other people getting in.
Anyway.
No, Donnie's not helpful.
I haven't seen as much beta hate, just people being jerks or anything. There's been a lot of just helpful advice given, even if it's advice that you see a lot of the same question being asked over weeks of time. They've been pretty nice.
Yeah.
There is a good level of help from the IT and alpha testers towards the beta testers that are not as familiar with the testing process that CSC is putting forward and the build itself, basically.
Yeah, I do feel like people. I mean, that's in testing always. I think there's always going to be people that just kind of pop in, but I think that's going to be something that we discuss as well, because I think that's also due to the nature of the administration of the test. So now that we've talked about some positives, let's get into just kind of listing, not necessarily getting into the weeds yet, but just kind of listing some of the things that we think are issues. And I don't think anyone will be surprised that the first thing that is on my mind is scheduling.
Yes.
I've complained about it a few times in a few places.
A few.
And not just scheduling.
And I'm going to complain about it again.
I'm used to playing on American time zones hours, so I'm less impacted. But there is a big European community with a lot of backers that are IT alpha, and when the testing happens, most of the time we're either at work or we're in bed.
Yeah.
The testing are in the middle of the workday for Eastern time, which is basically middle of the afternoon for us. So it's not very convenient for Europeans right now.
Or anyone. I mean.
Or anyone. True.
I'm at work when that happens. It's like, ping, I'm not doing that. I mean, I'm working. What? But we'll get into that. Other issues.
I mean, the beta itself is in a state of beta by name mostly. I think there's a lot of similarity between what was in alpha and what's in beta. There's still not too much to do. More than alpha, which is why it's reasonably fun. But it's still lacking the progression of a beta because there's still so much tech work being done behind the scenes.
Yes.
Yeah. That is the, I know this is probably going to come up from somebody. That
no, Zachari's not here, so no.
No, I don't think he would say this. That's why I said he's going to be so irritated he missed this episode, because I know he wants to complain about a lot of these things. It is an old school beta. They've been saying that for years. It's not going to be like the sort of beta we normally expect out of games these days. And that is the one area I do feel like that is generally a fair statement to make. It doesn't have a ton of game content in it that like we would normally expect in a beta. That certainly could be improved and would be nice. And they're slowly working on that. But there is, I also feel like you can only say that so much before it also starts to sound like an excuse.
Yes.
It's an old school beta. Okay, we get it. It's been years though. And it's been repeated for a long time, and there's only I don't think it applies equally and as fairly to all issues.
And to be honest, having been in some old school betas, it's more of a late alpha than a beta, even for old school.
Yeah, and there's still some reason for that, and we'll definitely get into that. I've added that to my list here. For me, one thing is, and I know we don't normally talk about topics too much before the show, but we discussed this a little bit, and I know feedback was something that came up. Feedback from them. I think we do get great feedback in some ways, specifically like during the test. rapid response to new bugs and things. But I think there are some other areas where perhaps different levels of feedback could be beneficial. And that's kind of the common thing that we see in any online discussions. You know, people are like, it's an old school beta. And people are like, it's really more of an alpha test. I mean, let's be real. And I don't want to. It's really semantics. So that's why I'm like, I don't want to get too much into.
As long as we have something to test.
That, but I think it's certainly fair to go, well, this is what we would like. Regardless, out of our beta 1. So any other topics that we want to cover today? I think the knowing the future and the path for the testing is
an actual roadmap. Yeah, no,
definitely something
I'm not
discuss.
expecting dates because we know how CSE is with dates.
Yeah,
but
no,
not looking for
order in which we can expect things being implemented. So telling us, like they have in some way, saying that right now the main focus is the 64-bits client, and then it's going to be the majors. But past the majors, we don't really know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
they don't know what's going to happen. They've admitted that they have no focus beyond basically up to December, that they have no roadmaps ready.
Yeah, and that disturbs me. As a longtime backer, that does bother me. I'm like, either you're
especially with
not telling us or you don't know. I don't really like either option. I especially don't like the idea that they don't know and have it projected that far out, because I mean, like, I would assume you would at least have an idea, like, okay, we knock that out, then we want to do this. Anyway,
you know, perhaps it was a misspoken use of words on Mark's end, that he meant something other than what he said, but he admitted that they've not gone over roadmaps,
which does happen sometimes. I mean, the weekly wrap-ups are unscripted. They do sometimes put out stuff and say things, and it unfortunately we have no option but to take it as canon until it's countered. And so I think we can move to our first topic that I have, which could be one of these issues. I don't feel like it is, but could have some issues related to that, where it's just something stated and now it's canon, and then it doesn't get implemented. I don't know, because maybe we shouldn't have taken it as canon, and that is scheduling. One of the differences that I always thought that they were suggesting that Beta 1 was supposed to have is a regular, fairly consistent schedule for the Saturday night sieges, for the weekend tests. I thought that was like the whole, that's like half of what Beta 1's supposed to be, is a regular schedule. Now, is it fair that by regular schedule they might have meant that generally we're going to have a test on most weekends? I guess that's possible, and that's kind of what we have now. But it's not what I interpreted it to be. I interpreted it to be, I would know when those tests were going to be more than 2 days in advance.
When in some case more than an hour in advance.
I would like to know in a week advance of when they're going to happen. Honestly, the weekday tests don't bother me. Like the impromptu weekday tests, because they have to be in the office to do those. They need someone there. It sucks because the time is really not good for anyone to test outside of them. But I get it. But the weekend tests for a beta test is supposed to be availability of the testing for us. And what they're doing every weekend, it seems like they're just going, this is our latest build. If it's ready for testing, we'll put it out. If it's not, we won't. And I'm like, well, what about your last week's build? Like, shouldn't we just be testing our last week's build, not this week's build? Isn't that what the alpha testers are for?
IT and alpha should be testing the latest build. The beta should be testing the previous build. And for me, the way I interpreted it is that during the week, they implement a bunch of stuff, they test as they need, and in the weekend would have been a kind of stress test of the bug fixes. But at the moment, it's mostly emergency bug fixes and tests, and not so much planned it.
Well, and Hey, Andre. The one of the things like Sephardi, they said they want to test every weekend. I don't really want tests every weekend. I can't get on every single weekend to do tests. I don't want to do that. What
And it's going to burn out players anyway.
Yeah, what I would actually be fine with fewer weekend tests if we knew at least a week in advance, if we knew on a regular schedule when a test was guaranteed to happen. So if they said the first weekend of every month we will have a Saturday Night Siege, I would say, cool. I will plan for my guild to be there as an event. We'll bring out as many people as we can for that weekend every single time, and or at least most months, and see if we can get that testing event going out, roll out as a group, and do that. Now, do I only want one weekend test a month? No.
Fortnightly should be fine.
Yeah.
Every 2 weeks.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, if they could at least guarantee me there will be a testing event this weekend every month, I would stop complaining about the schedule. I would be like, fair enough. And because that's the problem. We have a guild. I've been promising for ages to run guild events for testing.
We've been wanting to get together to test
because we don't know until Friday whether it's going to be the next day.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And
because we usually know on the wrap up.
On a Saturday.
In the middle of the wrap up, we're waiting. Server's going to be up. We'll have to wait for Tim in an hour, to tell us. And then the test does happen, and it starts, at least for me, on the west coast of the U.S. at 9 o'clock in the morning when I'm out till 11 o'clock, usually scheduled on a Friday night. I'm not waking up at 9 o'clock just to test.
And that's, we've got people all over the U.S., so our official time zone is Eastern, but I would say maybe a third of our members are actually Eastern time zone. I'm not Eastern time zone. So we all go into the test. It ends up being about noon for me. And the other problem for that is we have a fair amount of European members. I could have sworn, now I figured it wasn't going to be at the start of Beta 1, but I thought one of the main goals for Beta 1 was to have a separate US and European testing time.
Yeah.
I could have sworn he pretty much blatantly just said that was a thing, and we've heard nothing about it since Beta 1 started.
Yeah.
It's hard to plan for anything when you don't know when you need to be there. And it's not just frustrating for us. I do believe it's hurting the testing also, because they don't have enough people. Yes, they're I can't remember off the top of my head how they call their bots, but
bots.
They name them very specifically for the fact that they take as many resources as a player would being logged in, but a bot can't try to find bugs the way a player can.
Sorry, that just struck me funny.
But yeah, I don't remember the name they used for them, but archetypes or something like that.
I don't remember either. It's been a while
since
I've heard them.
They're for me, the bots can't make up for the lack of players. They can do it for the integrity test of the server, not for finding bugs or trying to break the bug fixes that they've put together.
It's tough because you have people, say, in Australia. I know that time zone well enough that 3 a.m. or 3 p.m. my time is 8 a.m. Australian time, and that's about the time tests are done. Like, tests are ending as they're getting up, and they're missing most of them, if not all of them. The time zones for testing is just really too catered to the U.S.
Yeah, and that's Salty Chew. What I was referring to is I'm pretty sure Mark Jacobs said at one point that during Beta 1 we were going to have separate testing times, not servers, but separate
servers.
testing times for EU and for US, so that there'll be something that was more suitable for US and something more suitable for the European testers.
Yeah.
And we haven't heard anything. I mean, I haven't heard anything anyway. Admittedly, I haven't made all of the wrap-ups lately, but I still read the emails and stuff and haven't seen much. No, the weekend tests
Yeah.
are not 24 hours. They've said
No.
before that
Yeah.
they wanted them to be in set windows. So,
Mhm.
what as I recall, what they originally said before Beta 1 started was that the tests were going to be on like most weekends, not guaranteed, but most weekends, and they would be on we would have a schedule of the tests, and that they would be on a set window. So maybe there'd be like a U.S. test on like a Saturday at like 1 to 2 or like 1 to 3 or something, and
Yeah.
then there'd be a different EU test at a different time, and you can still get on either one if you're available.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But there's distinct time zones so that
I understand. I understand the thinking behind restricting the access time. But I do think for weekend tests, they should have a bigger window, say a 6 or 7 hours, so people actually have the time to show up and test.
yeah. I
Because
actually
a 3 to 4 hour window in the middle of the weekend,
Yeah.
when you've known the previous day in the afternoon, it's hard to plan for it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's impossible to really plan to get a group together and really do anything organized. We've
Yeah.
tried. We've got a guild of very dedicated people, and we sit there and we go, "Hey guys, we just found out there's going to be a test. We'll do an event this weekend, which is tomorrow, in 12 hours.
I'm busy.
Be there." Well,
Yeah.
I've already got plans. I've already got doing stuff. I'm not going to be there at 9 a.m. And people do show up, but
Yeah.
it's like a handful of people, whereas we could be rolling out maybe 10 to 15 people for an event. We're getting like 4. And that, to some degree, that's not their problem, but I have to assume that's impacting their testing and the results they're getting as well.
Exactly.
And I don't mind the smaller windows. I actually agree with having the smaller time slots that are like 2.5, 3 hours or whatever they
But
usually
then
are.
repeat them over the weekend.
For the weekend tests, because I'm not going to get on and test every other weekend for 4 or 5 hours. And if they have the long, like 8-hour window, then people are going to get on at different times. It's going to be very spread out. That might not be a problem if they give us a heads up a week in advance. I don't know. But I suspect in the long run that would be an issue. Whereas if they only give us like a 3-hour window. But they do, if they're doing that, there do need to be 2 3-hour windows.
Yes.
One for US, one for EU.
Or even 2 of each. Like two
Yeah.
two sessions.
I mean, multiple sessions throughout the day. They have 2 offices on completely opposite ends of the country.
Yes,
In the
exactly.
U.S., they can filter in their management of these through the time zones to allow, say, the West
Exactly.
Coast team to come in later in the day to start running some tests for the West Coast, and then also leading into the European time
Well,
zones.
Exactly.
It's also a part of it is also what they're testing for. Again, as we said earlier, at least from my point of view, Beta 1 testing is generally not testing the latest and most recent version of the game. We shouldn't be. I don't think Beta 1 testers should generally be expecting to test what just came out this week. We should be expecting to be testing what happened last week or even a month ago.
Yeah.
So that's what the alpha testers are for. So when we have these tests, what I feel like we should be testing generally, it shouldn't necessarily require people on monitoring to make sure the servers aren't crashing all the time.
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
that's kind of the point. It's not absolute brand new server stuff. Sure, there's going to be crashes. But I feel like that's part of the issue. They're scheduling at times that fit for people they can get on and be available dev-wise to run the tests. But for what I normally expect in a beta test, again, this is an old school beta. It's not a new world beta. But for what I normally expect in a beta test, I don't expect something that we have to seriously worry is going to just be crashing all the time.
Yeah.
And it being a test, if the server does crash and no one can open it, oh well. I get over it. I go do something else because it's a test.
And I agree with Pocket. The fact that they are having the same time slots every time, every day. They get the same testers, and most of us, as hard as we try to test everything, we tend to test whatever interests us. I know when I log in tests, I do a couple of rounds of the scenario, but the most part of the testing goes into crafting.
Whereas I go,
Because
that looks so tedious and annoying. I don't want to do any crafting, and I just do a couple rounds of the scenario, and then I log back off.
Whereas I spawn lights everywhere I run and turn my graphics card into a burning hot molten core of lava.
To be fair, that's not hard. I mean,
yeah,
your whole thing just crashes out.
Yeah, I just run and spam the drop light button over and over again.
I'm sure they love you for it. I mean, I'm sure somewhere they're just like, oh yes, keep dropping them lights. But anyway, I did want to move on to feedback because we kind of talked about this a little bit, and I think it does relate to the scheduling, as we were talking about the concern of not getting enough testers in because we don't have enough forewarning. It's at weird times still, and part of the issue with that is Kriss mentioned that it's impacting the testing because we don't have that many people. Yeah. I don't know. Is it impacting the testing? I would assume it is, but they don't tell us that. I would like to. Part of what I think they do give us good feedback about some things, and like I mentioned, the bug reports in Discord and stuff. One thing I would like to know more about is the testing giving them what they need? Are we doing a good job with that, or do they need more people on? It seems like we only really get that when there is a big problem. They're like, guys, we really do need testers. I mean, they always ask for more testers, but they never really go into like the testing's not working. So we really
but if they ask for more testers and they don't get them, maybe the reason is not just the testers.
And they usually ask for that during like the weekly wrap up. We get the emails every week. I read the emails every week, even usually after I go do the weekly wrap up just to see what else is in there. And there's usually not a call out in there or a status update for like, this is how the testing went this week. You guys did great. Or we didn't get enough people this week in the testing. We really need more testers. That's all I'm really asking about is like a sentence about, are we doing what we need to be doing or do we need to ramp it up some? I mean,
they've never explicitly said they don't have enough testers. In fact, most times they have a test. It's like, we had a great testing weekend, and they'll mention like we had maybe 200 people on over the weekend. And in my mind, I'm like, and in my mind, I'm like, there are thousands and thousands of people who have backed this game, and you only have 200 on during the weekend.
Really, I don't think that necessarily has to be
There's thousands of people who have beta access.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they don't really have to give us like a every week update on how beta testing went.
Yeah.
But it would be nice to have a frank update at some point on like, is it really meeting their goals? They tell us for a specific test what they're trying to accomplish, what kind of bugs they want us to investigate and stuff. And that's effectively what we're doing is bug testing. But I guess it would be nice to know on occasion to have updates in the greater context of testing. What are they looking at, and are we getting the numbers that they really need to meet that, or do we need more people?
That's the thing. They kept telling us that the release of the game will also depend greatly on the testing being done. The more tests they do and the more feedback they get, the faster they can fix the issues, the more likely they are to keep their schedule. Make it so that people can actually log in and test to improve your feedback, to improve your bug reports, to improve. Not everybody is going to stay 8 hours testing a game because everybody's going to get burned out. But having people being able to log in regularly to test, to do bug reports, it's going to help them in the long run.
Yeah, and let us know, are we meeting those numbers? I mean, and like you said, they've kind of hinged how far the game's going to progress on how well the tests go and whether or not people log in to do the testing. So, okay, we had a great test this week. Does that mean we got as many people as we need to, or are we still not really hitting those goals? Because I can say sometimes I can't get in there with a equal squad of people for testing. I can go in there and go, well, we're kind of short. That's not good.
Yeah.
Help me help you.
Exactly.
So on that trend, we were kind of flirting with it a little bit. Is the roadmap?
Yeah.
Anybody want to start that off?
Uh,
Go
Sure.
ahead.
I mean, we don't have one. Obviously, we don't have one. I don't think they
We
have a
little bit of
full
one.
one.
We have a
We have
little
a-
bit of one.
We have a very,
I'll
very
give 'em
small
that.
one. The roadmap is coherent, which is almost in as of this week. 64-bit client, mages. In between there somewhere, building destruction.
And I'm happy to have that. But
Yes, it's great. After
And
that,
they are working towards skill building.
towards that, yeah, that's an ever-growing,
Mhm.
ever in progress thing. After that, though, it's
Forever.
very vague, and I think I would want to at least see this is the order of things that we're hoping to get in or work on. We don't have dates, we don't have time frames for it, but this is the order in which we want to prioritize what
And-
we're adding in.
Yeah.
A roadmap is needed because, for example, that would avoid something like that. Sparty, which is not the order they gave us, which is coherent, 64 bits, then mages. 64 bits is their right now biggest goal. So it's coherent first, supposedly. 64 bits, and once the 64 bits client is in, then the mages, and then we don't know. The ability builder is a constant thing they work on. They haven't told us when we're going to be able to test it.
Maybe we need
For
to
the
do a
moment,
whole.
we have pre-built. We know that's not under NDA, but we have pre-built ability
Mhm.
for testing.
Maybe we need to do a whole episode on why 64-bit is a big deal.
Yeah,
That would be
I say
that would
that-
be
I
an
say
hour
that,
of Brand
But
explaining us.
I was gonna say yeah because
No, it wouldn't.
Even though they tell us why, I still don't really know. Like I know what they've told us, and they're like it'll be better for graphics and efficiency, and I'm like cool. I mean that's cool, but
Yeah.
I still don't know what it does really. And I feel like I can't be the only one.
Oh no, I'm the same.
But yeah, I mean, it would be easy. It would be nice to have a long-term roadmap, like you said, without dates. Just I can't. I don't do any project without a roadmap of where it's going.
Yes.
And I plan a lot of projects in my work, so it's weird and confusing to me to not have a project, have like a roadmap of at least when certain thing, what order they want things to happen.
Yeah.
In. And of course that can change. The roadmap is going to change. And it is doable. They can't tell me it's not doable because other games have done it. As much as I don't like bringing up Crowfall when we talk about Camelot Unchained, except to say that they like to steal ideas. But I just slip it in there anyway. They did give like a development timeline sort of thing for a while. And they're like, this is what we're working on and when. And yes, it shifts, and other games have done it. Star Citizen kind of did it as well for a while, and it shifts, it changes, and
Yes.
they all try to give like dates and stuff, which I agree. CU doesn't need to do. Just say like the order. We would like to do this and this and this and then this
Exactly.
and then this, and after this is done, we could do this, and after this is done, we could do this. That is all liable to change, and there will be other stuff that is done throughout.
In the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and even then, breaking it down just slightly into by this point, this stuff should all be in beta 1. This stuff should all be part of beta 2, and this stuff should all be part of beta 3 as the last things.
I
coming
do
in.
eventually want the beta 2 checklist like we had for beta 1.
Yeah.
I'm not as big in a rush for the official checklist for what is beta 2, just because beta 1 just started. I mean, like a couple months ago. So, and I expect beta 1 to last quite a while. But it would eventually be nice to have it, even though to some degree I think maybe the reason they don't want to do some of that is because the beta 1 checklist ended up being a huge pain in the ass. Because they kept not fulfilling some of those things, and we're like, are we making no progress? Because these things are not getting checked off.
Yeah.
There's one reason why, and it's called 64-bit client.
I don't know. They need to, as Vellic said, they need to tell us exactly what it entails, what it's gonna do, because they say it's gonna be a game changer. Yeah, in what capacity? In layman term, tell us why it is so important and why it's holding back everything else.
I mean, I feel like they have tried to explain like the 64-bit client and why it's so important. And to be fair, maybe they've given us a general sort of explanation. And to be fair, maybe the detailed explanation would go right over my head and it'd be way too technical, and I would not get it anyway. That's entirely possible. Because sometimes when they do get some techie people on there and they start giving us tech updates, I'm like, that sounds cool, Brand. Is that cool? It sounds cool.
Yeah.
I'm
That usually goes like that.
Yeah. My only question for them at that point, and not in an upset way, I just out of general curiosity, is why didn't we start with a 64-bit client?
I think from all of us, especially those of us like me that don't really understand, that's the question is like, if it's taking this long, why is it still in a thing now, like 4 years in?
So, but not part of the roadmap. It's happening.
They see that's confusing because if that's the reason, then that even more Savardi, that even more pushes out the question of why is that not a thing? Because
why didn't they start with that?
Because most PCs have had more than 3 gigabytes since before they started making this.
Oh yeah. And there's been 64-bit clients since before they started developing CU.
So the whole 64-bit client thing just has question marks on it, at least for the backers. And like they say it'll make it faster and better, and that just makes us go, yeah.
How?
But why were we not already doing that?
Yeah.
I don't know. And I don't feel like they have to justify themselves or really explain it to me. It would be nice, but to some extent, as long as it's not delaying things, but when they talk about stuff and it really sounds like it is delaying things. And so then I'm like, well, now I do feel like I need justification.
It's not delaying, but it's holding things back.
It's become a requirement for other things. And if the answer to is, well, in hindsight,
definition of delaying.
Yeah. If the answer to the question was, well, in hindsight, we realized we needed it, then that's just what happened. Unfortunately, it was a hiccup that came up after the fact, and unfortunate, but that's where we're at.
I will say that is one of the things that, unfortunately, the saga of City State has been somewhat regularly. Well, in hindsight, we realize we should have done. And normally, and I don't blame people for that too much because it happens. But when it happens repeatedly, it makes me start questioning organization at that point, going like, where's the planning here? Anyway, I digress. We're kind of getting outside of testing at this point.
Yeah.
The point is, I think, that having a general sense of what is coming long term down the road, what features are getting they want to implement in beta 1 and within the next 6 months, I don't think that's a crazy ask from the community.
No,
especially
I think it's pretty reasonable
without timelines or anything. I mean, because they're not going to make the timeline anyway. They haven't made a single timeline yet. So I don't care for a timeline except for maybe like within the next 6 months, we would like to do some of this. Okay, fair. I don't even really have to have that. Just a general order of operations.
Yeah, just an order of things.
This and this and this and this and
like
this.
we have right now for 64-bit client, then mages, and then whatever. Just extend it. They know what needs to go in before the others.
Yeah, and as with the 64-bit thing, it could simply be that they thought it was going to be an easy transition and it ended up not being. I mean, that could be the case. I don't know, but
it's the next thing on the roadmap. So
yeah, and it sounds like they're relatively close.
Yes,
they've been keep bringing it up, and it sounds like it's a thing that's going to happen. I'm sure there will be a test right afterwards, and everything will be broken.
Yeah, of course.
Let's look at my notes here real quick. And I will again just reiterate, we do get some of this roadmap stuff in like the newsletters and in the wrap-ups. But like in the newsletter, it tends to be very generic. Like, we're working on clients and skills and classes. Well, okay. I looked at the last newsletter to see what it said, and it pretty much said classes and skills. And I went, great.
There's a lot of info in there that can show you kind of where they're going and what they're working on, but it's all stuff that is part one of a larger plan that we won't be able to see till much further down the line.
Yeah. And, you're not wrong, old boy. Most, the real truth of the matter is, for the most part, most MMOs, we would know less than this. In some areas, I will say in some areas we would know more, but they might be completely bullshitting us, and not really know what their timeline is for producing things. But they at least tell us, and we run off with it. Go yay! But for a lot of them, in general, we wouldn't have as much communication or knowledge of what's going to come out. But most MMOs aren't crowdfunded either, so.
Yeah,
I don't think the comparison necessarily is a fair one. We have reasons to be a bit more invested, and you and us and other people have been following it for like 4 years.
Yeah. Is it fair for us to think that they're slightly beholden to us? Maybe.
Oh, I think very much so. My money.
Yeah.
They've already got my money,
definitely.
so once I give you my money, I expect things. That's just how I am. I do not consider Kickstarter to be a gift. You know the old saying, when you give people money, you shouldn't expect anything back. I think that's true. I don't consider Kickstarter to be a gift. That is a purchase.
No, it's an investment.
Yeah.
It's not. I don't even consider it an investment because I'm not getting money back out of it. I consider it to be a purchase. I purchased a product that's not out yet, but that does not mean I don't have expectations for things.
Yes.
Like this person right now, I have currently a coffee maker I'm waiting on. I should have had that thing like 4 months ago. I still don't have it, and I'm kind of pissed about it. Anyway. I'm looking at chat here, trying to catch up because I wasn't.
Yes, and as Pocket said, we gave them sometimes up to 5 or 6, or some of us 10 times what we normally pay for a game.
Yeah, and well, that's why I think what it really comes down to is, I think we are justified. We, the backers, are justified in asking for things, and they're generally pretty communicative, and they acknowledge that they owe us things on occasion. I do think there's a limit to how much they can owe us and how much they should give us.
Yeah, no, of course.
I'm not saying that we should be intimately involved in every aspect of the game's development and know everything. I do think there is a give and take in that relationship. There's a little bit of there's a limit to how much we can expect just because we back the game. We're not like $1 million backers of the company or anything. That would be crazy. I'm not even like somebody like Sacrix, who I'm sure has like way more money invested than I do.
Probably.
He's got like, full access to stuff. I'm like, yeah, I got alpha access. That's all I got. So whereas a company goes, my meager investment in the game is not that big of a deal, but I think there's a little bit we can expect along that way. One other topic I did want to bring up to kind of round this conversation out, because it's not just on CSE. What more can the players do to try and improve the testing experience? One of the things we discussed earlier was, and I said I was going to bring this back up, was Discord.
Feedback.
CSE is really good at replying to bug reports and feedback and things in Discord while testing is happening. I don't see nearly as many bug reports happening on the forum, though, or happening in a very thorough fashion in the forum. And that is a thing I think we could probably do better, is actually going in there and posting bugs, all of the bugs, and really saying
more feedback from the testers.
I'm guilty of this too, because the Discord is so easy. If I get like a minor hiccup, I don't feel like I want to go to the forum and post that. I'll just throw it in Discord real quick. But I do feel like we could probably, as a community, do better at thoroughly documenting some of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with Svarty, we mentioned surveys earlier. Players can also form their own surveys on the forums if they feel like there's
polls.
if they feel there's something missing, someone can take the initiative to ask the larger community, what are you guys feeling about this? In which case, the devs will surely get involved because they do.
Especially since the vast majority of the people who are in the forums are also on Discord. So you can actually ask even the moderators to ping people if it's something of you think of importance. Ping the moderators to wait on that, and if it's something that is judged to be of importance, they can mention everybody and ping everybody on the Discord to go and vote for that.
Yeah, I agree, though. I do think, it's good for the developers to use polls and methods to ask people. One thing I really like seeing is just, I really like it when a game does tons of polling for the members, for the backers to ask for things. Now, I do believe CSE has done some of that over the years, because we've been backed for like 4 years. So, back in the day, they polled some people. And they can't just keep redoing the same polls over and over again. I wouldn't really want them to. Yes, there are new backers, but then if you deviate from an earlier poll, well, now you're changing things from what the earlier people had to say. And but like one thing was Ship of Heroes, which is a game that went to Kickstarter, failed in Kickstarter, and they're still trying to resurrect spiritually City of Heroes. Who, I don't know how good they're doing with it, but I've been following it a little bit on Twitter. But one thing I like about their website is they post up like a new poll every week about the game content. And usually they're small things. It's like, how much control do you want over the color of your abilities? Do you want to be able to alter the color of your abilities and things like that? And it's like, that's little, but it's nice because they're continually just asking for what different
feedback.
things people want and what some feedback on those sorts of things, so that they can prioritize what they're working on and everything. I certainly don't think
what the community can do also is waking up early and going to tests.
Yeah.
It is usually, I don't do anything on a Saturday during like noon for me. So if I go and log into the test, that's usually I'm either out having lunch somewhere at that time, or I'm still in bed, or that's usually one of my times to get on and like actually play something I intended to play, like Mass Effect or something, and. So then that does take up time I would have been using for other things. Fortunately, the beta one, as I mentioned, is kind of fun, so it works. It would be nice if I could schedule it so that I had some of my friends on to play with.
Yeah.
But that is something we can do, is try to turn out more, because I don't turn out for every test.
No.
The weekday tests, I don't blame anybody for not showing up for those. It's during the work week.
Yeah.
It's during the
I'm
work
at
day.
work. I don't have access to a computer that can run the game. So,
but the weekend tests, it would be. I think they can expect that we should want to turn out more often.
Yeah.
I haven't tested the crafting stuff yet, and I feel bad about it every time I log in that I haven't done it yet.
That.
And I'm like, I need to go gather some stuff and make stuff. And then the last time I was on, I was like, I should get on and make like a cloak or something. I'm going to go do that. And then someone just gave me the thing I wanted, and I was like, you're awesome. And now I'm not testing that mechanic.
You need to test that mechanic, because you'll
tested
that
that
if it's bugged when it's released.
That's your job. You're the crafter. But
you need to test out of your comfort zone.
I'm not immune to it. I need to go drop some lights. I can go help Brand. We can do a whole group thing where our whole group just runs around dropping lights, and maybe that'll crash the server.
The only issue is you don't see other players' lights. So
yeah.
That still puts a strain on the server. So
yes, but just in general, players coming in with the right mentality goes a long way, in that this isn't a game. This isn't just about, I'm going to go play this scenario and try to get the most kills. And you actually want to break the server. Come into any test trying to do something to annoy the developers because they thought they did the right thing. They thought they fixed the bug, and it's back.
Be a troll to the devs.
Yeah.
Prove them they made a mistake.
And I can say, Svarty, that is one thing I can wholeheartedly agree. Like with Blizzard, it really seems like they never really give a crap what the community has to say about stuff. They're like, we're gonna do what we want to do, and you can go to hell.
Yeah.
I feel like they have almost never backed down from something.
No, they haven't.
There has to be like a massive, ridiculous uproar for them to back down from anything. And again, that's one of those things where some developers fail entirely because of that. I still think Champions Online became a massive flaming wreck of crap, in large part because the developers are awful. Not awful at designing the game, awful at communicating with the community.
Yeah.
They were terrible.
Oh, yeah.
They royally pissed me off, and I quit playing the game solely because of their lack of communication.
I think Blizzard is the only ones that managed to get away with not giving a shit about their community.
Yeah. And I will say I do think Blizzard really likes their community. I think that they do a lot to foster the community. I just think they don't give a crap about the opinions when it comes to the game design. They're like, no, we're gonna do whatever we want anyway. And I can't really say that they don't ever change some things, but it's pretty rare.
Not a lot of things.
And CSE is comparatively fantastic about that. I've said that several times, and I will continue to say it.
We love that about them.
It is the main reason I backed the game as much as I did. I originally only had like beta 1 backer status, and their level of communication made me throw out more. But anyway, talk about players. I don't even want to go digressing too much about that. What players can do? We need to test more, and we need to test more things than what we necessarily,
as
like
Bram
you said,
said, people need to get in there with the mentality of testers, not players, and actually try and break something.
To be fair, I think it would be nice if occasionally we had very specific tests. Like if they said, we're going to do a test this weekend specifically for crafting. That's the only thing we're testing.
Deactivate everything else.
We're not testing PvP. We're just testing gathering and crafting and building stuff. And then another weekend, we're specifically testing sieging, not crafting and all this stuff, just like the castle siege or whatever. Because, yes, if they did just a crafting test, some people aren't going to log in. But I do think we need to get some people like me, who's bad at it, to go in and do the gathering and crafting. Because I'm going to go about it in a much different way than Kriss is.
Exactly.
Kriss is just going to walk out and he's going to look at the stuff and be like, I've been doing this sort of stuff for ages. This isn't that confusing. When I look at their crafting instructions and stuff, I get confused and then I don't want to do it. I'm like, what is this? This is still kind of complicated, man. I mean, I got to type it. I can't be typing in stuff.
And that's old boy, that's the problem about a lot of testers. They feel like they should be getting a carrot. The carrot is a good game that has no bugs. That's your carrot for testing.
I mean, it was a while ago, maybe 2 months ago, and I mentioned him earlier, Strike JK. We were all doing general scenario testing.
Thing in the test too.
He decided to just start spawning, and Mark mentioned this, so I can mention this because he mentioned this live. He decided to start spawning siege engines just all over the ground, blocking the entrances, thousands of them, just on top of each other, and eventually the client crashed. And Mark gave him kudos live on the wrap up for just thinking to focus on that, and that's the kind of mentality that I'm talking about. People need to go in to try to do things that just seem weird and off the wall, because those are the things that are going to break the game.
Yeah, but that's also one of those things, like having specific tests to try and do weird stuff to break the game, to check the code. Because if they're trying to test and run numbers for PvP combat, and someone decides, I'm going to spawn 5,000 siege engines and crash the server, that's kind of a problem. Because everyone's like, we're PvPing, and then the server goes down, and we're like, well, we're not PvPing. Okay. I certainly don't think every test needs to be like that. In fact, I generally think that like those preset scheduled beta 1 tests that I would like to have should probably be just generic. Just
Yeah.
here's scenarios, go do your scenarios, or maybe it's just a siege scenario, whatever. It can still be, it's mostly just for generic stress testing and just general bulk data collection. But outside of that, they have their very specific hyper-focused tests.
Yeah.
Maybe they save those for alpha. I don't really get into the alpha tests. And I admit I don't even look at the emails for them most of the time because it's at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon while I'm at work. So
Yeah.
I see it and go, delete. I can't log in for that.
Yeah.
And well, ideally I agree with Rahalden that testing should be voluntary. It is in the CSE's best interest also to give a kind of carrot to get people to test, to log in and test, because it helps the development of the game. So while I agree that you shouldn't go into testing reluctantly, because then you're not going to test, you're going to throw a few spell, swing your sword a couple times and then log off and not do anything. If there's a bit of a carrot to it, it might get people to actually log in and test. Maybe they will find a bug and that will be a contribution. It doesn't have to be a super dedicated tester because they get tired too.
Yeah.
To do everything.
Doesn't have to be combat.
And yeah, a random player logging in because they want their founder's point for this week and finding a bug. Well, they got their founder's point, but we have a bug that gets fixed.
They put it out. When do they put it out? They put it out last minute.
Yeah.
The night before the test. That's usually when the doc and stuff comes out, and then they go, "We're gonna do the test tomorrow. Here's the doc of what we're gonna do." And yeah, I can read that, but again, if I had a week in advance, I could read that much further ahead of time. Because I will say those docs aren't necessarily short either. They're not necessarily short. So
it's a few pages long email.
My willingness to read paper before getting into a game to try things is limited to a certain quantity.
Yes.
I will freely admit I usually skim those. I do at least open them and go, okay, what are we doing? But I'm kind of skimming like, okay, what's the selection of things I need to be doing? Okay, now what bugs do they know about? Those are the two things I look about. What bugs do they know about? What am I supposed to be testing? I could give no craps about what else is in the document unless I need something.
Yeah. I think players working together, even if they don't know each other, trying to communicate and bring everyone into doing certain things could help as well. One thing I'd like to see happen once building destruction is fully in is getting a lot of people together, throwing down scorpions, and on the count of 3, everyone firing the scorpion at the same target and seeing how the server can handle that many things going on.
Yeah, one thing I was going to say as just, again, things that players need to do is if you have friends that are backers, get in to test with them. Get them to get on every so often in a test with you. And this is, again, part of the reason why the lack of schedule bugs me is not just because I would like to give, my friends and my guildmates things to do, but also it's good for their testing if we have groups of people grouped up together doing stuff instead of just going into the test and then going like, oh, we've got 5,000 healers and no DPS.
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to be a very good test for our side. I mean, we're all going to die. We say that from experience. Whereas if I have my whole group, I can at least run one group that's fairly balanced with classes and go like, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this. We'll go together. Or we can go, okay, everyone's going to be an archer and we're just going to shoot the crap out of stuff and see how well that works. So organizing with your friends is really helpful, I think. And
it's a side of testing that you can't do solo.
Yeah.
Yeah, now the last minute during the week tests, I'm not sure how good of documents they usually put out. They send out an email that'll say like, this is what we're doing, this is what we're testing, please get in and
sometimes they don't even send an email, they just ping people on Discord.
Yeah, it's usually pretty short. I will say that.
1 hour, and if they do during the week, it's regularly our 1 or 2 hour sessions because something has been fixed or they finished a piece of code and it's extremely focused, and it's usually reserved for IT and alpha, where you get to try that very specific thing for a couple hours just to see if it holds up.
I do think sometimes they run tests like on the weekends and stuff. To some extent, to keep the backers happy, because it's beta 1, we're supposed to have tests, and I actually agree with that. I think that with beta, it being in beta, there is a certain level of that we expect to have tests test because we're in beta. But having those at times when no one can log on doesn't really help anything. In that case,
definitely.
I mean, not to be upset about it at all. I think the entire beta 1 launch was just to appease people.
To say that they were in beta.
Yeah, I think I agree with that to some extent. Because, and I'm not necessarily mad about it.
No.
Because I do agree. I do think that a part of the problem was if they didn't go into beta 1 quickly, people were going to start asking for refunds. And it's been every delay. Every delay, a bunch of people ask for refunds for the game.
Yeah.
A bunch of people throw fits, and I can understand it, honestly, from both sides. I understand why they would want to push it out and go, it's beta 1, it's here, haha, success. And for the most part, I do think we have like 80% of what beta 1 was supposed to be, what we were told it was going to be. There are just some things that I'm like, I was expecting that, or at least shortly after it started, and it's been a couple months now. So if we could get that schedule and stuff, that'd be cool.
That would be nice. Yes.
Stuff to really make it feel more like a real beta test, instead of just constantly having people say it's really more of an alpha test. I mean, guys, I don't. On like the Reddit, on the subreddit for CU, I just always say what they say. It's an old school beta 1 test.
Yeah.
And then people are like, well, I'm like, well, that's the official line. That's what I'm sticking to. And I do think that is one other thing that we can do as backers is also doing our best to be patient and positive. I do think it's important to remember to try to be positive about things and to give them acknowledgement about things that are good.
And not throwing fits.
And not just throwing fits and being negative just because we can. Because there's always negative stuff we can find. There's always problems. But I was going somewhere else with that, and I don't remember it now.
Being patient is a good thing.
Being patient will help.
That's what I was saying. I can understand like the starting beta 1 from both sides. I can understand why they would push for it, and I can also understand why some people want refunds for how long they've been waiting. It never fails that there's a tone shift in our vodcast from the beginning of a season to the end of a season. Beginning of a season, we're like, it's a new season of the show. We got topics and stuff. Yeah. Then by the end of the season, we're like, this game is still not out.
Pretty much.
Beta 1 has been delayed again. We have no new information. We are taking a break for 2 months. And I think the breaks are important because we can't really take breaks because we have a guild and we have to keep it going. And it's not likely to happen, but I pretty regularly have the the fear that all of a sudden after it's been 5 years of the game
everybody leaves.
Everyone in my guild is just going to go, we're sick of waiting, fuck it, we're leaving. And I'm going to go, all right. Everyone's gone. I can't stop you.
No.
It hasn't happened. It's not,
Please don't leave me.
But it's like, all this work gone. And it's a thing that does happen.
Yeah.
Usually post-launch. I feel like that does happen usually post-launch, about a year after a game launches. I usually expect about 30% of original members of the guild are gone.
I'd say a couple months after the release.
But I just mean by the end of the first year, like 30 to 40% of those members gone.
Definitely.
This game is not what I thought it was going to be.
Peace.
But yeah, and that adds to my stress level. So I can understand people becoming impatient. I have to regularly just kind of be like, goose fraba, deep breaths.
Yeah.
It'll be out
You know,
eventually. And try to do
getting
other stuff.
getting upset and taking it out on the developers isn't going to make anything come out faster. In
Nor
fact,
is
it might
harassing
only
them.
just lead to a ban of some sort. But
I don't know. They tolerate Sacrix, so
And it impacts the devs also. They're humans.
we're probably okay.
They're
Yeah.
humans, so at some point it impacts them also.
Yeah.
it impacts other players, the community.
Yeah,
And
the community
when you're
itself.
looking at a game with an already very specific demographic, lower numbers than most MMOs, you kind of need your community to stay alive for the game to flourish.
Yeah. I generally think that. Oh crap! I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry, I'm sick. I'm so congested right now. I'm trying not to go on stream. Get distracted by chat real easy.
Yeah, no, I agree with Svarty about being truthful.
That's what it was.
Harsh, not necessarily, but truthful to ourselves.
There
I
are
think-
some harsh
yes.
folk out there on the forums already.
Oh yeah, there's
think-
more than enough harsh people on the forums and the Discord towards CSE and towards the rest of the community.
Yeah. What I always
I believe
strive
that.
for is to be fair.
Yes.
I've been called a fanboy before. We actually all three of us have.
Yeah, we have.
At the same time.
By Sacre.
And our entire guild. But I try to be, I try to stay positive in the large part because I think it's good for the community and it's good for the developers, just for us to be generally positive and encouraging. But I do overall try to be fair. Like with this episode, I thought it was best to start with the positives, list some negatives, and then it goes back and forth during the talk because I do think we need to call them out on things that we don't like and call them out on things where we think they've said something and they're kind of backing out on it or they're not following through on it, so on and so forth. And I think that's absolutely fair. But we should still be mindful to give them credit of things that we did like. And things that they have been trying to do, and when they improve, like the weekly wrap-ups, I do think to some extent they still tend to lack substance.
Yes.
But I feel like they have been better lately than they were for a while there, where we were just getting like the same, like it's stuff in development for like weeks. So, I think it's important to acknowledge that. It's better. We'd still like more.
Yeah.
I can always want more. I can always find something to complain about. Well, I think there's a difference. We're fans of the development and the developers. I don't think we're fanboys because I was having an argument.
I don't like the term fan because it has the connotation of you don't see the negative. I think we're supporters of the game and of the studio and of the devs, but we don't have rose-tinted glasses. We see the problems and we talk about it. We've done episodes bitching about stuff quite a lot.
For me, fan is basically the same. It's synonymous with supporter. Fanboy for me means you see nothing wrong with the game. You have nothing but positive for it. You refuse. Like I was arguing with somebody earlier on Reddit about Fallout 4 and how buggy the game still is. It's never been finished, and that's just Bethesda. The game's riddled with bugs. I'm not saying it's a terrible game. I'm just saying it's riddled with bugs. And they're like, every game has bugs. I'm like, yes, there's bugs. Then there's Bethesda bugs.
Yeah,
it's a whole
meme. They count on the modders to fix it.
It's a whole meme for a reason.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with being a fan. I think to some extent there's nothing wrong with being a fanboy and being super enthused about something. But sometimes you're going to be wrong. So
Yeah,
because
of
you're
course.
kind of blinded by your excitement and love for it. And that's a cool thing to some extent. It can also
Yeah.
sometimes be a really annoying thing.
Yeah.
At any rate, I think we've pretty much covered most of this. Does anybody else have any
Perfect.
positives or negatives about the testing, areas of improvement that they wanted to mention that I just didn't get to?
Just test, and try to be in as many tests as you can.
I should get
Uh,
more. I want
Brent should
mine.
wake up earlier.
They're showing an effort, I think, to really give us nice testing environments. That's what the whole Dragon Circles were all about, was to give us scenarios to experience a little bit of everything while we wait for things to really start to flesh out. And so far, that experience has actually been fun for being an alpha beta test.
Yeah.
I think they're much better than it would have been without the scenarios. Just throwing us out there free for all into what it is now in beta
With the
1. I
size
think
of the
we would have been
islands also.
pissed. I think we would have been kind of pissed off. So that was a good call. Even if I do not want them in any permanent status in game post launch. Glaring at you, Kriss.
That'd be me. I'm the one who keeps saying that they're going to be in some form.
You. Yes. Glaring at one of you. 3 issues. No small race for Arthurians. We do need a short person race. Arthurian ships looking straight at the 1800s, and Viking is not a good name for a realm.
They're going.
I don't
on
disagree
the
with
hype,
any
I
of
guess.
those. The ships one doesn't bother me, but
Yeah.
I also play WoW on occasion, so I can't say anything. I mean, if there's any game that just randomly smashed a bunch of crap together from different genres and eras, it's WoW. I don't remember when it was that it occurred to me. I think it was about 2 years ago that I finally realized that WoW is a fantasy steampunk game. It never occurred to me till then. I was like, wait, WoW is basically steampunk. Holy crap. It's steampunk with magic and fantasy. They've got airships. They've got robots. I mean, they've even got a whole area now that's very Victorian themed. I mean, how is it not steampunk?
Yeah.
Well, it was not at launch. That's the only time I played it.
Yeah,
So.
but now.
I don't know. I avoided the plague.
Everyone's got guns and cannons and gadgets and bombs and all kinds of stuff. And I'm like,
nope.
Yeah, it's like fantasy steampunk with a little bit of sci-fi thrown in. So we got space goats and crystal ships. Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. They just grab all kinds of stuff and just smushed it into a game and went. And I have a lot of issues with WoW, but
I do
whereas the setting of things and like how they've smashed a lot of that stuff together, I do kind of like it. Like I won't lie. Like the setting and stuff, I do kind of enjoy, and that's why sometimes I go back to it. But more than anything,
that's because you're weak.
It's also pretty much the best MMO to roleplay in. So.
You mean the only one?
Yeah. More or less. And that's mainly what I do in it now, so that and level, because I'm super far behind. Anyway, so if no one else has any huge updates, we'll go ahead and end the recording.
Yep.
We will be back in 2 weeks to have episode 61. I'm not entirely sure what we're going to talk about. I do have a list here that I guess I could pull up to let people know.
Yeah. How about they decide what we talk about?
Yeah, y'all have any ideas? You have any huge things you would love for us to talk about? I would be more than happy to add it to my topic list.
If we gave you a list, can you guys pick one out for us? Because we just never seem to.
Yeah, we try. We just us on Discord or in the forums to give us ideas of topics you would like us to talk about.
Let's see. Our next couple things we were looking at was player build versatility, player adaptation between fights, the ability to build differing versions of a class, just kind of talking in general terms about what that might look like. Our own sort of BSC day, someone else had suggested this the other week. If everything went amazingly well and delivered perfectly, what is some crazy stuff we would love to see in the game? new classes that we would want to see in CU or that the backers would like to see that aren't already planned. That was really something. That was a poll I was going to like stick up on the forums. So we need to poll that at least a week ahead of time. At some point we want to do a crafting topic, but that's difficult because
I would love that
under NDA, and so we don't know what exactly we want to talk about, but we want to talk about crafting.
Yeah. I would love to talk about crafting, but I would be probably straight. We would be the video
tough.
would be struck with the NDA like really fast.
It would be tough.
Yeah,
we have done a gear progression episode. That's one of the issues we have problems with is we've done 60 episodes, so coming up with something we haven't discussed. I don't mind redoing topics, but not unless we get new information. Which,
right.
Until we get new information, there's no point.
Let's see. But at any rate, we will have an episode again in 2 more weeks. It'll be episode 61. We'll be talking about one of those topics probably. So everyone join us then, or if you're
unless
watching,
they drop a bombshell in one of the wrap-ups.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen.
64-bit client is out. I mean, what?
Yeah.
But we don't understand it enough to talk about it. But anyway, and if you're watching the recording on YouTube, then expect another recording in 2 weeks.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Click the subscribe button.
And test.